It's showtime, everyone. My guess is, from what you've been hearing over the past couple of months from the introduction you just heard, most of you probably think that what we're going to unveil today is probably the greatest thing since sliced bread, or at the very least, the greatest thing since the discovery of germs and antibiotics. And fortunately, I think it's actually close to that. It's going to be very exciting. One thing before we actually start, I noticed they're videotaping this, and I know the company's planning to release the videotape. So I'd like to suggest something, that what we're going to talk about today, what's being recorded on the videotape, really is distributor training. It's like secret information for you. It's not really appropriate for customers, in the sense that most customers won't want anything this detailed. What they're really looking for is, turn on a switch and does the product work? So this really is training for you. With that said, let me also point out that we're going to explore some areas that you're not familiar with, that really blow apart your preconceptions of what health and nutrition are. We'll totally transform it. You have, and everybody currently has an idea of what nutrition is, what supplements do, things like that do in the human body. By the end of today, that will be totally blown apart, totally transformed in your minds. I need to tell you something before we start. We're going to cover some areas that are sort of very involved in this. We're going to cover the nature of life, the nature of energy. We're going to even touch on subatomic physics. I guarantee you by the end of it, we're going to be showing you some things that are absolutely spectacular, proofs that will blow your mind. We're going to be showing you benefits that you will not believe. But to get there, we have to cover this material. I also guarantee you that along the way, there'll be places, like when we're talking about subatomic physics, you may be scratching your head and asking yourself, what's he talking about? And the one thing that I ask from you is, if you reach one of those points, understand it's going to be very brief. We're not going to stay there very long. If you don't understand it, it's not important that you don't understand it, only that you know the information exists. Because someone, somewhere, will ask you for that information, and you'll be able to refer to it. The other thing that I promise you is that as we do this talk, as we proceed today, that along the way, regularly, probably about 10 times through the talk, I'll stop and say, what have we learned so far? This information, what does it mean to us? What are the important points? So any point you feel confused, don't worry, because within a minute or so, we'll summarize it in very simple terms so you'll understand the essence of it. With that, let's get started. Okay. First slide represents a paradigm shift. And we need to talk about this because today, what we're going to talk about is actually a paradigm shift. I probably need to explain a little bit about what a paradigm is and a paradigm shift before you understand why it's important. A paradigm is essentially your view of the world, or a large chunk of information in that world. And it's important to understand, because if we're going to basically present a new paradigm today, you need to understand why how you perceive things affects how you learn new information. It literally shapes the way you can take it in new information. It also explains why we're going to take sort of a longer way to get there. If I just presented the end stuff, the benefits and the proof, it would hang there out in nowhere. You wouldn't understand it. So we're going to take it step by step. But you need to understand that paradigms represent the way we see things and the way we perceive things. The modern use of the word paradigm actually came from experiments done in the early 1950s, results recorded in Scientific American. And what they found, what they were testing for, is to see how scientists responded when they were presented with new information in the data that conflicted with what they believed to be true. They'd slip in new information. They found some amazing things. They found that the scientists, when presented with this new information, some of them would look at it without ever evaluating, would just go, oh, this doesn't fit, it's wrong, throw it out. Now, if it were true, that would be interesting, because they would be eliminating information that was important to them. They also, some of them would look at it and say, oh, it's wrong, it should be, and would change it. I mean, literally, they would just change the data to make it fit what they thought. And the third group was most interesting. They actually would look at it and not see what was really there. They would see what they thought should be there and transcribe it incorrectly. And this actually has historical precedence. It was said that the Indians who first saw Columbus's ships, the Nina, the Pinta, Santa Maria, when they arrived, and they're not very big by today's standards, but certainly according to the canoes or referenced by the canoes the Indians had, were very big boats. because their paradigm had nothing that would encompass ships of that size, it's reported they physically could not see the boats on the water. Now, I know a number of you are going to be asking, how can you not see what's there? But I'll tell you, this is very common. And in fact, much of the information about health and nutrition that's out there, you don't see now. Not because it hasn't crossed your eyes, but because you can't see it. Let me explain. On the screen is one of the most famous paradigms of all time. And that is that the Earth is flat. And it only makes logical sense if you think about it. I mean, if you try and stand on the ceiling, you fall down. So therefore, everybody in olden times knew, over 99% of people believed, that the Earth was flat, you go too far, sail too far, and you fall off the edge. That was obvious. I mean, you couldn't stand on the sides of the Earth or the bottom if it was round. That wouldn't make any sense. Now, what I submit to you is there was evidence that proved that that paradigm was absolutely wrong, that everyone in the world, virtually, unless you lived in a mountainous area, everyone in the world could actually see. That information existed. But they physically couldn't see it. Or they made the information do something or change it in their minds so they couldn't recognize it. What is that information? It's very simple. Anyone who lived near the ocean or lived near a plain where they could watch a cart going in the distance, anytime you could see anything going in the distance, if the Earth were flat, think about this, and something's going off in the distance, what happens to it? It would get smaller evenly. It would just shrink in size and disappear. But that's not what happens. What happens? In fact, it gets smaller and starts to disappear from the bottom. It literally, the hull of the ship will disappear, then the mast will go up as it gets smaller. So it's doing two things, getting smaller and disappearing from the bottom up. That's an impossibility if the Earth is flat, because you can see everything. The only thing that accounts for it is that the Earth is curved, and as you're going down below the horizon line, basically it's cutting off the bottom of the hull. This information was available for every single person in the world to see, if fewer than 1% of the people in the world understood it and knew the world was round. Columbus was only one of that handful of people who knew. Now, what Columbus did when he sailed basically to the New World is he was able to shatter that paradigm, so the paradigm of the flat world could no longer hold up. And once it shattered, then everybody could see what they could not previously see. Does that make sense to you? I mean, basically, there it existed before. They couldn't see it. Suddenly, the paradigm is shattered. There's a new paradigm that's now understandable. And then what was seen before is no longer seen, and things that previously were not seen are now seen. This is really important to understand because what we're talking about today is a brand new paradigm. And we're going to blow apart what you previously thought you knew and present new things to you. Now, the place we need to start is at the very beginning. As I said, we're going to take a journey. What I'll guarantee you at the end is you're absolutely going to be blown away as you see absolute proofs of what we talk about. You're going to see crystal clear proofs, and you're going to see all the benefits. But we need to start at the beginning to get there. So let's start at the beginning. You need to start with the nature of life. All life is energy. This is a fairly simple statement, and most of you will just, well, sure, but not understand what it means. All life is energy. We mean that in two ways, both macrocosmic and microcosmic. Let me explain. On the macrocosmic level, the physical body, cells of your body, every single cell in your body, the trillions of cells, every single one is a mini battery, putting out 70 to 90 millivolts. Did you know that? Did you know that your body basically is composed of trillions of mini batteries, 70 to 90 millivolts? Who knew that? See? Most of you just learned something new today for the first time. It was worth the price of admission, right? Okay. Other things, the neurons. Neurons in your body, your nervous system. You basically get sensations in your fingers. What is it? Well, it's chemically stimulated to start with, but then it's an electrical impulse, literally running through the nerve, to the spinal column, up to the brain. And what is your brain? It's basically nothing but a giant fireworks display of electrical activity. How do we measure brain activity? With an electroencephalogram. It measures electrical activity in the brain. How do we measure heart activity? With an EKG, electrical activity in the heart. That's what we're measuring. All life is energy. Talking about digestion. What is digestion? Digestion really, well, of course, you're breaking food down to get building blocks, but fundamentally, what you're doing is you're eating food, is you're doing just like shoveling coal or wood into a steam locomotive. You're fueling a fire. You're burning it without flame. Simple question. When you eat a large meal, do you feel cool or do you feel warmer after you eat it? Of course, you feel warmer. It's basically you're throwing fuel on the fire and you're burning. Again, all energy. Muscle activity. You've all seen the experiment or films of the experiment where they take a dead frog and put an electrical charge on the leg and the leg jumps. All muscle activity is energy. Everything, the whole body is nothing but a symphony of energy. In fact, Chinese medicine has a whole system of medicine based on the fact that the body is energy. It's all, basically, if you're healthy, energy is flowing smoothly. Any constriction, you have disease in the area. That's fairly obvious. That's the macrocosmic level. But at a more fundamental level, at the microcosmic level, it's even more true. See, I submit to you that when you understand the nature of matter, you find out that what we consider reality, this world, the reality, the substance of the body, everything, is somewhat of an illusion. Now, it's a commonly shared illusion that we all share together. But it's an illusion. Let me explain. The fundamental product, or the fundamental particle, that we base everything on is the atom. We say everything is constructed of an atom, and we call it a particle. But what actually is an atom? Let's visualize it for a moment. If you have a room basically about 5 times bigger than this one, several hundred yards out, the nucleus of the atom, that's its biggest part, is actually represented by a couple of grains of sand in the center of this several hundred-yard space. What's on the outer edge? It's an electron. Is it a particle? No. It's a shell of energy that totally surrounds this space. So the atom, fundamentally, first of all, not being solid, is fundamentally mostly empty space. Several hundred yards of empty space, a few particles, and an energy force field surrounding it. When you assemble things into matter, basically you're dealing with nothing but force fields. Everything we look at and see, force fields. When your hand hits each other like this, you're basically just force fields repelling each other. You take it even further down to the subatomic level, and you start dealing with particles like quarks and so on. Essentially, you're no longer even dealing with force fields. You're dealing with nothing but mathematical probabilities. It's nothing but math at that point. And even the particles have names that sort of represent that quality. I kid you not, the physicists call them things like truth and beauty, the quarks. Fundamentally, then, everything is energy. In fact, not only all life, how do we consider death? Basically, death. And you can look at here, basically, right, you're looking right now at an EEG, a rotating wave. We define death as the absence of electroactivity in the brain, electric activity. If that were not moving, we would say that person is clinically dead. 20, 30 years ago, how did we define death? Right, we used to define it basically by absence of electrical activity in the heart. You'd watch in the old ER things like that, but you'd watch the oscilloscope going up and down, and when a patient died, flatline. Essentially, we define death as the absence of electrical activity in the brain, formerly in the heart. All life is energy. So, what have we learned so far? Remember, I told you, I promised we would stop regularly along the way and say, what have we learned so far from all of this? Very simple. Of the 3 statements here, only the first one is what we've learned so far. I think we can pretty well say and understand that all life is energy. The other 2 statements are premises, statements that we're going to explore as we go on. We haven't proved them yet or indicated anything about them. 2 statements are, one, is theoretically that if all life is energy, if you think of just even the fact that the body is composed of trillions of cells that are mini batteries, if the batteries are functioning at half voltage, your health is less than optimal. If you raise the voltage of those mini batteries, you're improving health. If you optimize the energy in your body, you're going to optimize your health. Haven't proved it yet, just a premise. Second premise is if you charge your body with the right frequencies, you can prevent and even reverse disease. Again, we haven't proven it. It's a premise that we're going to explore as we go on. If we can prove that, you've got to admit, that would be exciting. Okay. You like the picture. All right. Simple statement. Is energy either good or bad? It's neither. It's neither. It's neutral. It all depends on application, frequency, and amplitude. Give you some examples. Electricity. We have the Frankenstein monster there. Well, there's one right out of science fiction. You're using electricity to animate the parts of dead people to create a monster. Well, certainly not beneficial. On a more realistic plane, how did we execute people for years? With an electric chair. We used electricity to kill them in prisons. Okay? Take that same electricity, give it a different application, different amplitude, different frequency. Now we go to a chiropractor's office and we have a TENS machine that they apply to the muscles of your body to stimulate those muscles to relax you. Same electricity, different application, different amplitude, different frequency, entirely different result. Another one, laser light. Another thing from fantasy are the death rays that they talk about in science fiction. Well, they're actually working and creating rays that can kill with lasers. They're certainly in Star Wars looking to use laser beams to shoot down incoming missiles, right? But different application. Take the same laser energy, different application, different amplitude, different frequency. Doctors perform microsurgery with it. Dr. Roy Brabham on a medical advisory board, plastic surgeon. You know what I'm talking about when I mention here. That you now use, plastic surgeons use laser light to perform skin peels, to remove hair from people's bodies. Yes, absolutely. Same laser light, different frequency, different application, different amplitude. One other, sound. You can use certain frequencies to make people nauseous, to make them ill, to stimulate epileptic seizures in people prone to it. On the other hand, you use the same sound, different application, frequency, amplitude, apply it to a kidney stone in lithotripsy, and you can break the thing apart. So energy, and very important to understand, neither good nor bad. It's the application, the amplitude, the frequency. And you'll need to understand this when we talk about what we're doing today. What we're going to present today, and here's the premise, here's where we're going. Nothing here is proved yet, it's just a premise. But I guarantee you we can prove each and every statement before the day is done. One, that it is possible to embed energy in products to a degree never before imagined. Yes, it's always been possible to embed energy in product. You can do it with any standard kind of energy. The problem is it doesn't stay there very long and it's not very strong. We're really talking about what people have done in the past is like a match burning. What we can do now is like a raging inferno burning. It's that different, that strong. Two, part of the paradigm that we're going to present is that you can then, if you basically embed the energy in products, you ingest the products, you can transfer the charge from the product to the cells of your body, to every single cell in your body. If you can do that, based on what we understood about all life being energy, you can optimize the health of your body. That's what we're going to do today. Okay, you need to start at the very beginning, sort of, and discuss the nature of energy to understand where we're going to go with this. This is basically a picture of James Clerk Maxwell. That's my Scottish impression. He's the one who basically in the 1860s, like 1868, proposed in a set of 4 equations the nature of energy. And I'll explain that. What I want to do is mention, and the next slide is one of those places I guarantee you're going to have a brain hiccup. If there are 2 people in this room who understand the equations that are going to appear, I'd be really surprised. Now, don't worry that you don't understand. I'll tell you the one thing. There's really one thing that you need to understand from those equations. I will tell you exactly what it is. But also do a little explaining. Let's see the next slide. Is there anyone, see, not even 2 in the room who understand those equations? All right. Let me give you just a couple, and I'm not sure how much it'll help you, a couple of descriptions of what those symbols actually mean. The triangle shape refers to the vector differential. That didn't seem to help anyone. All right. The H there stands for a magnetic field. E is for the energy field. The other things are Greek letters. You're looking at like epsilon, delta, mu. Not a help to you at all. Let me tell you the one reason this is important. It's because it's the first time in history that it was ever expressed that there were 2 distinct kinds of energy. What do you mean 2? You can think of lots of them. There's electricity, there's sound, there's magnetism, there's light. No, they're all one kind of energy, as you're going to hear. There's another kind you know nothing about. It's part of the new paradigm. It's part of what you need to learn today. And it's really where our focus is going to be, because it's where all the benefits lie. But actually, let's actually pull up the next... Oh, no, hold on. What I need to do is tell you it's the 4th line of the equation, where he first proposes that second kind of energy. It's the P symbol, sort of the rho shape. It's actually the Greek letter rho. It stands for the scalar charge density. It's also referred to as standing waves, as longitudinal waves. This is the first time in history it's ever proposed. That's why this is significant. That's all you need to know about it. Now, what we're going to do is talk about the 2 kinds of energy. Basically what we call transverse electromagnetic waves. That's everything you know. And this new energy, which is very significant for what we're doing, longitudinal electric waves, I said, or scalar energy, or standing waves, all the same thing. Before we go to the unfamiliar, let's talk about the familiar so we have something to compare to, okay? It was about 20 or 30 years after Maxwell proposed his equation. And by the way, I should mention, that those are not the original Maxwellian equations. His were actually, when he talked about scalar energy, were longer. The problem is because no one could measure or see or prove that they existed, people began to question whether the math really was correct, so they began to de-emphasize it. And those equations were cut down, I believe, by a scientist named Heavybody, the equations that you saw in the previous frame. But it was about 20 or 30 years later that Heinrich Hertz first was able to demonstrate and lay out mathematically the qualities of transverse electromagnetic waves. This is everything you know. Let's look at those things. What you're looking at here are basically a definition of transverse electromagnetic waves is they are a rapid alternation of electric fields along a fixed axis. We'll do it in this direction. This is the sine wave you're all familiar with, and we'll look at one in a second. This is every kind of energy you know. Electricity, magnetism, light, sound, etc. In fact, let's look at a transverse. This is, and you're all familiar with this. You've seen it in oscilloscopes? Yeah, right. You've all seen it. What do I mean that every kind of energy you know is this kind? Think about it for a moment. Take sound, for instance. If you go down to the lowest frequencies that the human ear can hear, you're getting around 30 or 60 cycles per second. You take it on up to the highest frequencies you can hear, and I think you can actually hear slightly higher than that. But if you take it up to the highest frequencies you can hear, you're looking at around 10 to 13,000 cycles per second. Beyond that, to let's say 20 to 26, you don't so much hear as you sense or feel them. They're part of the overtones of instruments that you'll feel. But essentially, we just define the range of sound as the frequencies, the cycles per second running from around 30 to, let's say, 13,000. Okay? What's light? Light's the same thing. It's the alternating waves of the alternating cycles per second. At the lower end, at the lowest end, you have infrared. That's the reds you can't even see without special film or equipment. Some animals can see, men can't. You then take it on right up as you move faster, as it cycles faster and faster. You're talking about red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, and violet. And what's beyond violet? No, it's ultraviolet. It was ultraviolet. Basically, it's the violet beyond what you can see. Essentially, everything determined by the cycles per second. Cycles per second we often refer to as hertz. We determine the speed of the chip in a computer as hertz. It's 133 hertz, 750 hertz, etc. That's everything you know. Now let's talk about what you don't know. It wasn't until, basically, it was around 100 years ago today, virtually, that scalar waves were first demonstrated and proven by a person that I consider one of the greatest minds to ever walk the face of this planet. Man beyond Einstein in many ways. And we'll talk a little about that in a bit. But he basically performed an experiment that proved definitively that Maxwell was correct, that there was a second kind of energy, scalar energy. What he did is he took this energy and pumped it into the Earth and demonstrated that you could literally pull that energy out. If you put it in, let's say, in New York, that energy into the ground in New York, you could pull it out in Minnesota, you could pull out it in China. Pull it out in China, and the strength of that energy would be absolutely undiminished. It would pass through the Earth as though it didn't exist there. Now, if you think about it, that's an interesting quality, because we know none of the energies that we deal with, light, sound, electricity, can do that. So we already have a hint that there's some unusual properties to the scalar energy. Now, I actually have to mention something here, because if you go on the net and you look up Tesla, you're going to find things talking about conspiracies relative to him, and it also explains, we need to explain why, if he discovered it 100 years ago, you haven't heard about it since. The conspiracy theories go, well, Tesla proved that you could pump energy into the ground and you could pull it out anywhere with no loss of power. This held out the promise of free energy, and in effect it did. Well, if that were true, then the powers that be that were selling power would be interested in suppressing that. So basically, they sabotaged his funding, they took his laboratories from him, they sold off his equipment, they bankrupted him, then they destroyed all his notes, and when he died, the secret died with him. I think what you'll actually find is the truth is somewhat more mundane than that. Before I actually explain that, let me tell you a little about Tesla, because it'll explain how we got where we are. I mentioned that I consider Tesla one of the greatest minds to ever walk the face of the planet. Let me tell you something, the way he worked. He could basically create in his mind complex equipment that would generate. I mean, this is the guy who created alternating current, 60-cycle alternating current, Tesla coils, things like that. He could basically create equipment in his mind down to a 10,000th of an inch in detail, precision. He would then take that, once he'd created it in his mind, because he didn't do notes, start it running in his mind and shove it into his subconscious. And then he'd go off and he'd begin living his life. He'd do whatever he did, run laboratories, maybe even run 2 or 3 machines simultaneously in his subconscious. Then 6 months, 9 months, a year later, he would take that device that he'd created, started running in his mind, and pull it into his consciousness. And he would literally, in his mind, I kid you not, look at how the parts had worn. And then according to how the parts had worn, if he saw they had worn in a way he didn't like, he would modify the equipment in his head and build it from his head, and it would always work. This man was out there. He was also a very strange dude, as you'll find out, and that relates to his problem. But it also gives you a hint as to why notes didn't survive, because he didn't take them. He did everything in his head. Now, here's what happened. I told you he's a strange dude. Well, he had an unusual lifestyle. He loved to spend money. And he made millions. I mean, he created alternating current. He made millions. He gave away tens of millions more. When it looked like some of the companies that were selling alternating current might not survive, he gave up his royalties to it. Gave away tens and tens of millions of dollars. But he didn't care. He was funded for everything. He had money coming in. Unfortunately, he spent it hugely. His lifestyle, he lived in the top 2 floors of one of the most expensive hotels in New York. I don't know if it's like the Ritz or the Astoria, but he lived in the top 2 floors. What does it cost to live in a suite in the most expensive hotel in today's dollars in New York? Was it like $3,000 a night, something like that? What would it cost for a whole floor? What would it cost for 2 floors? You're looking at something like $20,000 or $30,000 a night he's spending to live in a hotel. You could buy a house in a day with that money. But he's living on the top 2 floors because he likes the hotel lifestyle. Well, now here's a guy, he now presents to his investors this whole experiment which you can pump energy in the ground. He presents it to his investors. This is something nobody has ever seen or proved before, difficult to explain, and he's promising basically that you can now provide energy for free to everyone. So his investors are going, what the heck is he talking about? I don't understand it. No other scientist in the world knows what he's talking about. And even if they did, it looks like at the end, after we fund it, you give it away for free. Why would you fund it? So what they did is they pulled out their funding. They just saw no future in it. Well, now he's running up $20,000, $30,000 a night back in those days dollars. I mean, I don't even know what it is. And very quickly, he started to go bankrupt without funding. Ran up millions of dollars of debt. So it was the hotel that took over his laboratory. And they sold the equipment not to hide the results, but to try and get some money back. And then when he died, since he never took notes, the secret disappeared with him for about 70 years. It was only about 30 years ago that it was rediscovered, and as always in scientific discoveries in our century, its first application was in warfare. They were basically looking to see how you could implement it for warfare. Here, I'm going to tell you something right now. No, actually, I'll wait. We'll talk about that later. If you go out in the net, you're going to find that it's been theorized that the Soviet Union was doing research to develop mass weapons of destruction with scalar energy. It's only in the last 5 to 7 years that its healing applications have really come to the fore, and in the last 2 or 3 years that new technologies have arrived that we basically have been able to identify and bring to the company here that have totally transformed the ballgame. Okay, next slide. Here's a definition that I don't think will help you very much, but it's a definition of longitudinal waves. Alternating concentrations of densified and rarefied pulsations of electrostatic fields. Probably doesn't help you a lot. Let me show you a graphic image that will show you more of a standing wave. This shows you more. You notice it looks a little like the transverse wave, but instead of moving out, it stays in place. Okay? What does that mean? Well, it tells a couple of things. We get a hint from here. I'm going to give you a hint of where we're going. If you were going to embed an energy field in a product, think about it. You have a transverse wave that we know moves out and through the product. How much residual is it going to leave in the product? not too much. And that's always the problem, because people have tried to embed energy in products before. There was actually a product line that I know of that was using magnetic energy, but since it didn't stay very long, they had to sell actually a magnet that you'd get with each bottle to keep the thing charged. Again, the charge wasn't very much, and you needed the magnet with it. Or what would hold a charge better? If you put it in the product and it stayed in place. Isn't that fascinating? The energy stays in place. Next slide. Here's a definition that may mean more to you, a little bit. Basically, what you're talking about, scalar waves are created by a wave and its anti-wave or replicant wave, an identical wave, that are in space, in phase spatially, out of phase temporarily in time, and actually probably more out of phase like this. What you actually get in a more accurate representation of a scalar wave is, we'll see on the next slide. Effectively, what you're looking at here is, it's almost the shape of a Mobius pattern. Notice it doesn't cycle, but it does move out along a vector. When you create the wave in a place, it does move out. But notice it moves out almost like a field. It's field-like. It passes through anything. Talked about it passing through the ocean. Well, think about this. If you take a scalar-enhanced product in a bottle and you put it next to something that is not charged, that charge passes through the plastic bottles as though they're not there, and will charge the product next to it, up to the ability of the product to hold the charge. And the better the quality of the product, the more it will hold its charge. We'll talk about that later, too. It implants its signature on objects. If you choose the right frequencies, healing frequencies, it will implant those frequencies in the object you're charging. It regenerates and repairs itself indefinitely. Here's a question I know that's going to come up. I will answer this 3 or 4 times in the same way, so that I hope no one asks me at the end, and I'm sure someone will. How long will the charge last? It can last indefinitely, provided the product you've charged is not exposed to some field for a long enough time to drive the charge out. In other words, if you charge it with a scalar field and you place it next to a 60-cycle line and you leave it there, eventually that 60-cycle line will eliminate the scalar charge, and it cannot regenerate or repair itself. On the other hand, short-term damage repairs. What do I mean by short-term damage? One of the things that can damage a scalar field is exposure to X-rays. So if you take your product, you measure the field before going to the airport and the charge is this big, and you run it through the X-ray machine, and you measure it, it'll be this big. When you come out the other side of the X-ray machine, put the product on a shelf, and 3 days later, the charge is back up here. Okay? I assume you're applauding for scalar energy. And I'm sure it's glad to hear it. Okay. Scalar energy, when you choose the right frequencies, the right charges, has a whole range of beneficial effects on the human body. That's the payoff in this talk. That's where we're ending up. So we'll wait on those. But I guarantee you, they're astounding. The last little piece is, how many of you have ever been to things like whole life expos and shows like that? Have you ever heard of devices like tachyon pendants that you wear, tachyon charges, radionics, pyramid energy? These are all scalar energy generating devices. But they're generating, again, at that matchstick level, not the inferno level. Let's talk about how you actually generate scalar energy. You can do it in a number of ways. Anything that generates electricity will generate scalar energy. It's generated every time you have a power generator. There are scalar fields being generated underneath. We already talked about the nuclear sub. That power plant on the sub is generating a scalar field underneath. We talked about a Mobius strip. The physical rotation of a Mobius strip can generate a scalar field, and it is possible to generate scalar fields by moving certain hieroglyphic looking like patterns on a computer monitor. You can actually generate the scalar waves off the monitor. The system that we're using, and we did not create it, there's a team of people that did. In fact, the leader of the team is here, and I'll introduce her to you later. Developed a technology. It actually combines several proprietary technologies that's never before been done. What they're doing is taking a set of computer monitors. Each one is generating a scalar charge. You can actually, if you hold your hand about an inch from the screen, you can actually feel the charge coming off the screen. What they do is they create a chamber. And right now in the world, there are several dozen chambers in the world which are primarily used by people going into the chambers. They'll be in doctors' offices, and people go and spend time in the chamber. And there are a couple of companies that have taken like one or two products, like some nose drops or something, and charged product. This is the first time in history that any company, on a large-scale manner, for all of its product line to reach millions of people, is charging product with scalar energy. You need to understand that. They take these 4 monitors, they aim them together, and this is precision aiming. Actually, the team that comes in to install this, it's a very expensive process, comes in to install it, actually uses lasers to line up these monitors. It's very precise. And they all focus in the center of the chamber or room, and in the center is an amplifying device that amplifies that energy. How amplified is it? Remember I talked about that nuclear submarine and the fact that the generator that powers what is generally considered to be the most sophisticated equipment ever developed by human minds and human hands is the nuclear submarine. And that nuclear generator that powers that submarine puts out a scalar imprint that can be read by satellites up in space. The intensity of the field that is being generated in these chambers that is charging our product is virtually identical in intensity to that being produced by the power plant of a nuclear submarine. This is huge, huge stuff. The field can actually be ready. The equipment in Owensboro, Kentucky that is charging the product actually can be seen from defense satellites, or the charge. Now, I'm going to be able to show you that all of this stuff we're saying is true. Okay, now let's start getting to the fun stuff. We've done some hard work. You feel like you've been in school or something? Okay, let's start moving towards the fun stuff here. It is not an accident that we're in Nashville. This is called Music City Miracles. Terry and I have been tracking this technology for about 2 years. When we decided that we were going to bring it in, we were looking basically for a way to describe it. Because one of the hardest things is because people, it's so unfamiliar to people, because you're breaking a paradigm with it. How do you put it in a way that people can understand? Basically, what people have been doing is versions of what I've just done. Technical explanations, which only give you a vague idea, don't give you a sense. So we came up with a metaphor that I think explains it really well, that basically centered around music, player pianos, country music, and we figured where better to do it than Nashville and call this event Music City Miracles. So this event was designed around this whole technology. I'm now going to lay out a metaphor for you. It's got basically 2 parts, 5 steps in each part. So it centers around a player piano, and let's actually go to the first slide. We're going to talk about playing music on a player piano. I'm going to use as my example. I realize we're in Nashville, but I'm basically more of a rock and roll guy, so I'll split the difference with you. And we'll say a player piano roll that plays Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones. All right? Is that sort of a split the difference? Okay. Let's talk about what you got on a piano roll. We basically brought one in so you could hear a player piano playing. What is it? If you've actually looked at the roll, it's like sort of cut out holes and lines. It's basically things that are cut out on a roll that when you run it over a vacuum, the vacuum sucks on it. Depending on where those holes are, what the shape is, it tells which keys to hit and how hard to hit. Basically pretty simple stuff, right? Now the thing you need to understand, the fundamental thing is that once you encode Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones on that piano roll, that is the music. That roll is the music. There's no difference. You put it up to your ear, you can't hear it. It may not be useful to you, but it is the music encoded on that roll. You put that roll in a player piano, it always plays Honky Tonk Woman. It never plays Love Me Tender. Got it? Okay. But it's not useful to us, so we need to take it and encode it in another form. So what do? We play it on the player piano. Now that music that was on the coded roll plays to the player piano, and now you're listening to Honky Tonk Woman. But that may not be that useful to you. How many of you have player pianos in your home? I can tell you that we looked to rent one for here, that we had basically given up. I guess at the last minute they finally found one in Nashville that you could rent. They got the new digital ones, but the old style roll ones, they don't exist anymore. It's a little like, remember those charging chambers I told you about, several dozen around the world? Well, if you think about around the world, a couple of dozen isn't that many. So if you wanted one, to go into one to improve your health, you basically have to hunt far and wide to find one near you, and then you only get to go in for an hour every week. So it's not very practical, like the player piano. It's not very practical. But let's say we really love Honky Tonk Woman as played on a player piano, and we want to listen to it all the time. What do? We encode it in a different way. We put it onto a CD. What's a CD? Is it anything like a piano roll? Nothing like a piano roll. Is it anything like the player piano? No. It's a piece of plastic on which there are a bunch of pits on it. A laser beam shines down on it, bounces up, and depending on how it hits the mirror, depending on the pattern when it hits the mirror, it tells it what to play. Now, the thing to understand, that CD, although it's very different, is still Honky Tonk Woman. It's the same, it's the music on that CD. It's the same as the player piano roll. It's the same as the player piano. If you stick that CD into any CD player in the world, it will always play Honky Tonk Woman. It never plays Love Me Tender, right? Okay. But let's say that's really not portable enough. Let's say, in fact, that you're a strange person, and you like to go jogging every morning, basically to the strains of Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones as played on a player piano. I told you were strange. Okay. With a CD, you may have a problem, because CDs, when you run, basically tend to skip. So we need to re-encode it in a form that's more useful. We encode it now onto a cassette tape. What's a cassette tape? It's nothing like a player piano roll, nothing like a CD, nothing like the player piano itself. It's basically a piece of floppy plastic tape on which is painted a metal oxide, an iron oxide, that when you run it by a magnet, lines particles up and down, encoded in an entirely different way. However, it's still Honky Tonk Woman. The music is there, the coding is there, nothing has changed. If you put that cassette tape in any player in the world, it always plays Honky Tonk Woman, it never plays. You got it. So that when you now go running and you stick it in a Walkman, you can now jog to Honky Tonk Woman. This is the core, basically the metaphor. Now I'm going to show you how it matches up to what we're doing. What is our player piano roll? It basically is the computer code that is going to produce those hieroglyphics on a computer monitor. This is not the actual code, by the way. Okay. But what is computer code? I think a lot of people, because languages have become more sophisticated, have lost track of what computers actually understand. They use languages that allow you to use English, things like open file, close file, things like that. Computers don't understand that at all. Computers live in a binary world. Ooh, I wonder if that has anything to do with a compliment. Okay. Computers live in a binary world. It's all ones and zeros to a computer, and actually, more accurately, it's all electric voltage on and off, and even more technically, it's all either high or low voltage. That's all a computer understands. The two states, high or low, on or off, 1 or 0. But the thing to understand is once those hieroglyphics are encoded in the computer, and no matter what high-level language you use, it still comes down to ones and zeros, assembly language in the computer, machine language. Once you've encoded it, the energy is there. The scalar energy is inherent in the mathematics of the code. This is really key to understand. The energy is there. If you put that program in any computer of the world, it will always play those hieroglyphic patterns. It never plays word perfect. Right? The code is there. The energy is there. It's the same thing in a different state, not overly useful to you. How do we make it useful? We run that energy through a computer and play it on a monitor. Now, understand that field is coming off a computer monitor. We're using precise monitors. In fact, I think at some point they may have one set up. We have 800 people, so we can't really let everyone feel it. But if you actually were able to go to the monitor and put your hand about an inch from it, you could actually feel the charge coming off the monitor. It feels sort of like a pulsating cool breeze. I guarantee you never feel it on any other monitor you'll experience. But we have a problem, because that equipment is not very portable. It's also very expensive. It's a very expensive proposition to bring in. Not only to install, but you basically have to pay to regularly have it realigned. They come in with a team again to realign it, reset it up. As I said, there are only a couple of dozen places around the world where you can go to it. So this form, it's like the player piano. It's doing great stuff, but it's not overly useful yet. How do you make it more useful? What can we do to take that energy and put it on a CD? What is the CD in this equation? Well, before we get to that, would you like to see what those hieroglyphics look like? Run it. This is what the patterns look like. And you may ask, is this generating scalar energy off of these monitors? And the answer is yes, but less than from the smaller monitors. Smaller monitors, again, it's the same thing as that the Mobius strip that we talked about. The precision and the cleanness of the image is everything. And here, because this is a rear projection device, it's not very sharp. You could actually measure it coming off here, but it's still not very strong. Certainly not enough to do what we want to do. But in fact, if at some point we may or may not have a monitor set up, if you get a chance on an actual monitor, put your hand about an inch from it, I'd say only about 30% of the people are going to feel it. Why do I say 30? Because we can become very desensitized over time. We're so exposed to noise pollution, electrostatic pollution, microwaves, everything, that our bodies no longer feel energy like they once did. The other night I was having dinner with someone. The food they served was overly salty. And yet the person next to me added 4 tablespoons of salt to their food. Just like some people have desensitized their taste, we've become desensitized to energy. But I would guess about 30% of you will absolutely feel it. For those of you who can do that, that's a neat thing. It's irrelevant. The proof we're going to show you is something that everyone can understand and that is portable and you can take with you anywhere. That I guarantee you. That's what it looks like. But how do we make it more portable? What's our CD? Our CD is now the Healing the Globe product line. Every single product in the Healing the Globe line is now being charged with scalar energy to a significant degree, and we'll show you how significant in a moment. That's our CD. How do you transfer the charge to your body? Well, in fact, you could hold the bottle or tape it to your chest, and it would transfer the charge. Holding the bottle will transfer a charge to your body. Not overly useful. What is our cassette tape, though? The thing that will actually take the charge in your body. This is really kind of a neat. This is one of my favorite slides. It turns out that in the human body there are a number of crystal structures. And they exist in every cell membrane. They exist in all the intracellular spaces of the human body, primarily in a form of liquid crystals. Liquid crystals are often called the fourth state of matter. It's really neat stuff. It's liquids, and you're looking at right now an X-ray microscope photograph of a liquid crystal. It's a flowing liquid, and you can actually see it's got structure to the liquid. Sort of see that? What it turns out is every one of these crystalline structures is capable of holding a scalar charge. That means all of the cell walls of your body and all the spaces between cells all can hold a scalar charge. It also turns out there's another place that we'll talk about in a moment that holds a charge that's really significant too, but this is the primary place. This is the cassette player for your human body, all of the cell walls, all of the intracellular space. So what's the Walkman? The Walkman, as it turns out, is every single cell in your body can basically now resonate, now vibrate to the healing frequencies we're putting in. We will talk specifically about what frequencies go in. What do we mean by healing frequencies? But every single cell in your body, the trillions of cells in your body, are now resonating to these frequencies. That's the metaphor. Let's say what we've learned so far. Scalar energy can be embedded in products. Haven't proved it yet, but we set up a metaphor to help you understand it. The charge can then be transferred from the products to every cell in your body. Haven't proved it yet, but we set up the metaphor. And then finally, that your entire body will then resonate to those frequencies. Haven't proved it yet, all of which we're going to prove to you. It'd be really neat if we can do this, isn't it? Okay. Really neat, says someone, yeah. Move on. Okay, I mentioned there's one other place that charge will deposit itself. We've already discussed that it's likely the scalar waves propagate primarily through the crystalline lattices of the collagen network, that's the intercellular network, and in the cell walls. But it turns out there's another place that affects the very essence of life itself. Now, here's another place where you're going to scratch your heads. This is also one of my favorite graphics. Only one slide, don't worry, we're going to be off it in a moment. There is a quantum mechanical model that's proposed that describes some subatomic quasi-particles, things that are called like excitons, plasmons, solitons. You're looking at a pulson. It has been proposed that quantum particles store and carry, by the way, I've got to point out as I'm reading this, when I presented this to the Medical Advisory Board, we have two distinct personalities. Dan Hewlett, everything, thinks. Roy Brown, at this point, started bouncing up and down in his seat. Okay. It has been proposed that these quantum particles store and carry biological information along helical macromolecules in response to low-level scalar energy. See if you recognize what Roy recognized. What are helical macromolecules? DNA. Basically, scalar waves will embed in your very DNA. This has profound health implications, and we will actually talk specifically about that, and that's one of those things that you can prove and measure. But that's very profound. Next slide. Okay, what have we learned so far? There are two places scalar waves embed: in the crystalline structures, in the cell walls, and in the collagen network, and in your very DNA. And there is proof. You can sense we're now starting to get closer to the good stuff, the stuff you want to see, what you paid your admission for. There's proof that we can basically embed this energy in products. So we'll take the proof step by step. We can prove that we can embed the energy in the products, and then whether we can transform that or transfer that energy into our bodies. It's proven. And it can be seen. Ain't that cool? I told you you'd be able to show anyone in a matter of seconds. It's going to start to get fun here. There's one other slide we've got to look at first before we actually see it. You need to understand, you're looking at a magnet here. If you have a magnet, can you actually see the energy coming off the magnet? No. But if you run that magnet over a field of iron filings, you can see basically the shape of the magnetic fields. You can see the proof of it so that there is no doubt in your mind, incontrovertible, undoubtable, absolutely proof positive that the field exists. We can do the same thing with the scalar energy and prove that it goes on the products. Okay? Now we're going to get to the fun stuff. We're going to use several vehicles to do it. The first one is Kirlian Photography. Most of you are familiar with it. A lot of things said about it. A lot of misunderstanding. Let's touch on it briefly. It's very simply, Kirlian Photography says that every object has an electric field around it that you can measure or photograph, particularly living things where we call it the bioelectric field. Now, before I go on, I'm going to deal with something, because some of you may have heard there are things that have been said positive about Kirlian Photography and some negative. In particular, I think U.S. News and World Report ran an article like a year ago that basically called Kirlian Photography a hoax. Let's look at what they said. What they said, essentially, was that what is recorded when you take a Kirlian photograph is due to natural phenomena, such as pressure, electrical surroundings, humidity, and temperature. Duh! We would hope it's due to natural phenomena. That's what we're trying to do. Here's the heart of their argument, though. The changes in moisture, barometric pressure, and voltage will produce different auras. And yes, that's true. That's true. If you allow them to vary, they will produce changes in auras. So what they then did is threw the baby out with the bathwater. It would be exactly, this is bad science, by the way, their statement. It's exactly the same as saying because someone can stand up and say 2 + 2 = 5, because you can say that, all mathematics is invalid. Right? If someone can say it once, you can prove that there can be errors all over the place, dismiss it all. The fact that you can structure mathematics so that can't happen in a way that anyone would accept is irrelevant. The fact that someone can say it, we throw it out. The fact is you can take Kirlian photographs, which they didn't deal with, in environments where all of those variables they talk about are controlled. So they're not factors. And then you can still consistently come out with pictures that match certain patterns over time. Kirlian Photography absolutely is valid enough. The National Institute of Health and universities around the world, such as Cambridge University, are studying it. U.S. News and World Report article calling it a hoax is bad science. I'm going to basically show you a couple of examples now, some Kirlian photographs, and start setting things up here. On the next slide, not yet, I'm going to show you a couple of lentil sprouts, organic lentil sprouts. The one on the left, what we're going to do is we're going to put it in hot water. We're going to blanch it. Put it in hot water for a couple of minutes. Now, if U.S. News and World Report is correct, by putting it in the water, putting more water in it, they're saying the more moisture, the bigger the image, because water conducts the electricity. Theoretically, that should produce a bigger field than the one that we don't put in water. Right? Now, if what everybody who talks about health and healing says is true, that basically living things tend to produce bigger fields than dead things, then the image on the right, the one that's uncooked, should produce a bigger field. Let's take a look at what we got. First one on the left is the cooked sprout. That's pretty big. You can see the shape of the sprout is pretty good. Now, I'm not sure how much, can you see? Yes, you can. Can you see the red field around it? Okay. You can see basically a greatly expanded field on the right. That's the red field around the lentil sprout. It's a much bigger field. Also, one of the things that we know, again, from experience over time, is that when you have the red colors tend to be healing colors. Not that the red is... Let me rephrase that. The presence of red in the picture tends to show that the object tends to be more healing to the human body. That's based on observation and experience. Now, one thing to understand, in this kind of Kirlian photography, using photographs, you can basically use hermetically sealed environments where you're controlling pressure, you're controlling humidity, all of those things. There are two problems with it that open the ground for slight variation. Not much, because you'll find there's consistency here. The two things are, one is you're taking pictures at separate times, because you have to set them up separately, so that when you took a picture 10 seconds after another one, the barometric pressure might have changed slightly, and you can't control that. And two, you're using film, and each emulsion can be slightly different. Obviously, we know from taking photographs regularly they don't change that much. But those are two variables that it's possible to get rid of, and I'm going to show you in a couple of moments a different kind of Kirlian photography that removes every single variable from the equation. So there are no variables, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the one thing that this does on a photographic plate is you get to see color, and the color gives you information. You can see the one on the right basically is producing a bigger field. This is consistent. We find things that are alive, things that are organic, consistently produce bigger images and more reds. Give you another example. Next picture. Regular orange juice, and then you look at organic orange juice. Notice it's producing basically a bigger field, more of the reds. You see this consistency over and over. Would you like to see one of our products before and after embedding? Yeah. What you're looking here, let's look at the next one, will be Immunity Plus. You're looking here, Immunity Plus, nice big aura before and after. Notice now it's grown with the reds around it. Now the fact, there are two things we can learn from this. One is that the product beforehand produced a very big field, which would be expected, because it's all charged with a barren effect anyway. Producing a very big field, it's a high-quality product. When we embed, the only difference in these products is that one's been embedded with a scalar charge. You can see, forget what it means, forget that it's healing red or whatever. You can see that its charge has changed. Can you see that? It's absolute definite that there has been a change in the product, and the only thing is exposure to the scalar electrical charges. Let's look at one that's even more dramatic, done with the, basically what you're doing now is a, before we go to the next slide, let me explain what you're going to see. In this form of Kirlian photography, what you do is you take the pictures at the same time, so there are no variables. If the barometric pressure changes, it's changed for both products. So both products, all variables are identical. The only difference is the two products themselves. The other thing is, instead of using film, we're going to now use direct digital imaging, so we have no variations in emulsion. What you lose is color information, but you get a much more accurate energy information. What you're looking at here is colon activator on the left before charging and colon activator after charging. I told you we would be absolutely able to prove the charging affects the products. Have we done that? Okay. We have a lot more fun stuff to prove as this goes on. It does get even better. What have we learned so far? Well, we've learned that using Kirlian photography, we can say that the image on a Kirlian photograph, scalar energy enhances a product's profile both quantitatively and qualitatively. We can see that its energy output after basically being charged is bigger, it's brighter. And if you're using photographic film, it has more reds in it. That we can see, that we know. How long? I told you I'd answer this multiple times because I don't want to be asked it. How long will it last? Forever. Based on the quality of the product. The better the quality of the product, basically the more organic, the more alive it is, the better it holds the charge. Synthetic things don't hold charges very well. Incidentally, one of the reasons that we ended up hooking up with the people who produce this technology, as I said, they're using chambers for people. They were looking for somebody to basically prove that this works in products. So if you were looking to prove that it works in products, do you want the products that are basically probably best able to hold the charge of any line out there, or something that's likely to lose the charge? Yeah. So essentially, that's why we ended up meeting, because they had something we wanted, we had something they wanted, a product line that would demonstrate it. Okay. It repairs itself after exposure to X-rays. We already talked about that. And it can pass itself on to other products and to other things. Okay, that we already understand. All right. couple of notes, then we'll start moving into the benefits. This is, in a sense, an extension of the internationally recognized Barron effect. Let me explain exactly what I mean so there's no misunderstanding. In the Barron effect, what we were doing is using energy fields to basically change the fundamental structure of the herb. When we're making tinctures, the fundamental structure of the herbs and the extraction solution, which is water and alcohol. And the original proposal, basically, when I was talking with Ron Manwaring, and I came up with the idea that you could do this, and I came up with a way of doing it, I've got to tell you, since then, Ron has modified it and enhanced it tremendously. But the original idea that you could do it came when we were sitting in my living room talking to Ron, and we found that we were able to generate, just using the initial process that I came up with, tinctures that were 50 to 100% more powerful than any other comparable products in the world. Now, how many of you were in Indiana and ever got to taste those comparisons? Yeah. Some of you did, and you actually got to taste echinacea brewed one way and the other, and it was noticeably different. I will tell you that Ron Manwaring, and Ron, where are you? You're in the back? There's Ron. Ron, president of Royal Botanicals, the man who makes our tinctures. I always describe Ron as an herb nerd. It's like a computer nerd, but dedicated to herbs. This is a man who took basically the original thing that I gave him and has worked on it repeatedly, modified that initial process probably 20 times since then. I will tell you now the tinctures that he makes are probably 100 to 200% stronger than any other comparable products. Now, let me make clear, when I say an extension, I did not create the scalar energy process. It's different people. My claim to fame in this is I happen to know the people who did it, and I put them together with a company. That's my claim to fame. We do have basically one of the lead team members of the people who actually put all these technologies together and created this process and have done something never before seen in the world. And I'd actually like Sandra, could you stand up and take a bow? Sandra. So if you have questions on this, you don't have to pick on me, you can pick on Sandra. Which she didn't want me to say. Okay. What we're doing here is an extension of that. We're now, though, instead of just modifying the structure of products, we're working to embed a charge on products with profound benefits. But before we cover the benefits, there's one other thing. We keep talking about the frequencies. What frequencies do we use? The actual mix of frequencies is proprietary. But let me talk a little about how you determine those frequencies. There are certain frequencies that we know are beneficial to the human body. Have you all heard about, basically the alpha state? Basically, it's a state of relaxation people try and get into in meditation or using biofeedback. Have you ever heard of that? It's the relaxation frequencies. They tend to run around 7 to 12 cycles per second. That's the alpha state. When your brain when your brain waves are running at 7 to 12 cycles per second, that's the deep relaxation state. That's the healing state in the brain. Another beneficial frequency we deal with is called the Schumann resonance. If you were to go out in the desert where there's no human life, no power of any kind, nothing, no plant life, just the Earth itself, and you measure the frequency coming out of the Earth actually resonates to a frequency. It's called the Schumann resonance. It's around 7.8 to 8 cycles per second. Another frequency that's interesting, if you then go out to a rainforest in Brazil, you again have nothing human around, no power systems around, just the verdant plant life and the Earth, the combination of those frequencies, and you read it, it'll read around 12 cycles per second. The one other frequency that I want to mention is that every culture, all religions, basically account for people who are what we call healers. They have a healing vibe, healing hands, whatever. We all recognize it. I won't argue, what it does or whatever. All I'll say is every culture recognizes that some people seem to be healers. Now, the thing that's interesting is you can measure frequencies coming off these people when they're doing their thing, and they produce frequencies stronger in a certain range than anybody else. And it's consistent. You can measure it. And the frequencies that these people generate, regardless of what you think they do for the human body, but these are people we always label as healers, are generating frequencies that are consistently in around the 0.03 to 30 hertz range. The frequencies we're embedding, as you saw, and you actually got a sense of it when you watched that hieroglyphic cycling, is there are multiple frequencies being embedded. They tend to run primarily, and I would say the 0.03 to 30 range, with an emphasis on the Schumann resonance and the rainforest resonance. And in fact, if you were actually to measure, because when you do a measuring, you'll get one sort of some frequency off of it, it will tend to run around 12 hertz or the same kind of frequency you get in a Brazilian rainforest. Those are the frequencies we're using. And it's not arbitrary. It's been proven over time that these things actually do help heal. Okay, now we're getting down to the heart of the deal here. There are two groups of benefits. We're going to talk about the benefits. There are two groups of benefits. The first set of benefits are the small benefits, but I'm willing to bet it's why everyone thought they were coming here. Everyone would ask, ooh, is it going to make our products better than anybody else's? Ooh, is it going to make them, more powerful? Is it going to... Yes, and the answer is yes. It'll make the products more powerful and make them better utilized by the body. But I will tell you, that's the small potatoes. What you think you came here to hear is the small potatoes. The big stuff is that the scalar waves have a whole range of benefits unto themselves. And we're going to do a lot of emphasis on that. But I want to show you how powerful the small potatoes are. Okay? I'm going to actually show you proof positive that the products, when they're scalar enhanced, are now basically doing something that's never before been seen by any product line ever. Terry Martin and I look for ways to prove this and demonstrate it to you. We end up, again, I asked, how many of you have been to like whole life expos, things like that? It's actually not that many. For those of you who've been there, have you ever seen, or how many of you have ever seen things called like aura cameras? Those cameras you sit down, they take, more people seem to have seen that. Okay. Those are the things where you sit down and you get a Polaroid shot with this bunch of colored light around you, and they say it's your aura. Let me clarify absolutely and perfectly clearly, it is not your aura that it's taking a picture of. Doesn't mean it's invalid. What you're doing is you're sitting down, if you remember, and you put your hands on a couple of metal plates, and you wait there for a few seconds, and they take a picture. What it's doing is taking biofeedback from your hands. It's measuring galvanic skin response and temperature. Then there is a sophisticated computer program that then runs in the camera. The camera is basically a Polaroid, has a bunch of diode lights in it, and the lights are different colors and go out, different distance. The computer program reads the biofeedback and says, based on that biofeedback, red light should light up, orange light should light up, blue lights will tell which ones light up, how far to light up, where they should light up on the image. And over time, they've developed it so it fairly well matches the actual bioelectric field around you. What you're seeing when you see that picture is a simulation, a representation of the bioelectric field, not the actual field. Is that clear? It still has use, because we can then see if we can change that field. If we can change the biofeedback state of the body, the bioelectric field. Anyway, we went up to the people who manufactured that camera in Redwood City to ask them to see if we could test our product. And the owner of the company, Guy Coggins, at first was pretty dismissive. He said, well, yes, but we've had several hundred companies come up here to test their product. Everybody comes out with a new organic or super product, wants to test it and prove on our equipment that you can do it. He said, and they never get what they expect. Yes, can you see changes? Yes, but they're not as dramatic as people think they'll be. Yes, you can see the changes, but it takes longer. The bioelectric field is very stable. It takes a lot to move it. So what you'll notice is if you take a product and you wait 10 or 15 minutes, you'll notice some changes in the periphery of the field. So the other thing is that once they test one product, they want to test another, and you have to wait several hours for it to clear. They don't want to do that, so they'll pile one product on another, and they get nothing. So he basically said, you're not going to see what you want to see. We said, well, we have something that theoretically should do something different. We'd like to test it. So what we ended up doing is, let's test. We'd brought every product with us. We had a bunch of the tinctures. We had Terry Martin sit down, and we took his picture first without taking any of the tincture. And actually, let's go to the next slide. You can see Terry there with a blue field around him. Pretty, isn't he? Okay. Gave him one of the tinctures, waited 10 seconds, took the picture. Now what you're seeing, that's 10 seconds when we took the picture. And Guy Coggins was saying, no, you have to wait longer, you have to wait longer. We did it in 10 seconds. And Guy goes, oh my goodness. He said, I have never seen that before. He said, that's really impressive. He said, that's really impressive. He said, I have never seen that before in any product we've ever tested. He said, wow. He said, if you could do that again, that would really be something. He said, but you won't. He said, that won't happen again. He said, you need to understand that he's the president of your company. He's been using your products all along. His body's receptive to those products. And mentally, he knew what those products would do anyway, so he was all geared for it, and that affected his state. He said, but if you could do it again, that would be impressive. And if you could do it again with someone who has no familiarity with the products and never used them, it would be even more impressive. I said, do you have anyone here who works for you? He said, well, I could get Tavi who works for me. So we sat Tavi down, next picture, took Tavi's picture, tincture, 10 seconds later, Tavi. What we showed basically is all of the Healing the Globe products, now that they are scalar enhanced, literally can totally transform. You can literally take the product and the charge is being transformed into the body, and totally changing the bioelectric field in 10 seconds or less. As I said, Guy Coggins, they've tested several hundred companies' products over the years, and nothing. He's seen nothing like this. In fact, a couple of weeks later, he voluntarily, we never asked for it, he sent us a letter. Next slide. And this is so cool, I'll read it. He says, "Dear Mr. Martin, we at Aura Imaging were very impressed with your products. We saw the most profound and consistent changes ever with any product line." That's so cool, I'm going to read it again. "We saw the most profound and consistent changes ever with any product line. Thank you for the herbal product." We left him some of the tinctures. He said, "We are now using it to show how an herbal product can influence the inner energies as shown in the aura." Next slide. Okay. Now let's go to what you didn't know you were here for, the real benefits. And that was pretty cool for a sort of a minor benefit, wasn't it? Okay. Let's go to the real benefits. The scalar charge, basically the product is now a carrier. So when you take like Immunity Plus, and the Immunity Plus is doing its thing, the product is now also a carrier for something that's beneficial above and beyond Immunity Plus. It's cumulative. The more Healing the Globe products, the more these benefits take place in your body. One of the prime benefits, and we've talked about it, is that you can raise the energy level of every single cell in your body. And I will show you proof in a couple of minutes that we can do that. Proof that you're changing the energy level of every single cell in your body. We can prove it. But understand something. I said before that on average, the ideal energy level for every single cell is 70 to 90 millivolts. Unhealthy is below 40 millivolts. You reach around 20 millivolts, cells start to become cancerous. And I'll explain to you why in a moment. And then at 15 millivolts, basically the cell can't sustain itself. It dies and shuts off. That's pretty much the range. We can basically, regular ingestion of Healing the Globe, scalar enhanced products can raise the energy level of every single cell in your body to its optimum 70 to 90 millivolt range. Now before you clap, let's wait and see what that actually means. I know I see people are ready. I want to show you why that's important. It does two things. Here's another point, by the way. Actually, when I talked about raising energy levels, it was in the previous slide that Roy started bouncing up and down again. Because he knew what the next slide, he actually started yelling out on the previous slide, "Transmembrane potential! Transmembrane potential!" Which is not something you hear someone yelling normally. Let me explain. And Dan's going, thinking. It's great. The two personalities are great to work with. He's bouncing and just, Okay. It's a good board. Okay. What is transmembrane potential? Told you, every single cell in the body is a battery. The higher the energy state of that battery, the greater the transmembrane potential. Think of it like a waterfall. The higher the waterfall, the more energy that water generates falling. The higher the energy state of the cell, the more potential it has to force things through that cell wall. That means nutrients in, waste out. The higher the energy level of the cell, the more nutrients you get in, the more waste you get out. What does that mean? Well, among other things, true cellular detoxification. The capability of detoxifying every single cell in the body. Now, understand, this does not replace the colon detox and the liver detox. Detoxifying cells doesn't get rid of 8 to 20 pounds of fecal matter in your colon. That's a different matter. It doesn't get rid of fat deposits in the liver and toxins stored in the liver. But it does do something that those things don't do. Let me give you sort of a metaphor, a way to think about this, why this is important. If the transmembrane potential of your cell, if your cell voltage is at its optimum, and what I guarantee you is from lifestyle and aging and so on, that potential drops. But if it were at the optimum, it'd be like living in a house and you bring in all the things you need to live, your food, your papers, everything into the house each week, and every week all of the trash goes out. For everything that goes in, all of the waste goes out. But let's say you get a little lazy or a little ill. Your energy potential goes down. So as the food comes in, you can't take all of the waste out. You just don't have the energy to do it. You only take out 90% of the waste. Well, what does that mean the first week? It means you got, let's say, you had 100 pounds of waste, you got rid of 90 pounds, you have 10 pounds left. Put it in the closet. It's not a big deal, you'll never notice it. Right? It's not a big deal. Next week, you have 20 pounds, 30 pounds. After a couple of months of this, You still may not see it, but you're filling up your closet space, but you may start to notice the smell. It may make living in your house unpleasant. It hasn't made you ill yet, but it's not pleasant to be there. After a year or two, that garbage is festering, bacteria growing, maggots in it. Your house basically is now a disease-ridden place to live. It will kill you to stay there. Just literally a 10% loss of that potential to get rid of waste. The same thing is happening in the cells of your body, guys. As the transmembrane cell potential drops, the cell can no longer get rid of all of the waste. So it starts leaving granular waste material in parts of the cell. At first it means nothing. The cell's fairly big. You leave a few grains here, it doesn't affect it at all. Over time it gets a little bigger. The cell it runs, but not quite as efficiently. Eventually the cell is killed, strangled on its own waste. Cellular detoxification, true cellular detoxification, is a stunning health benefit. Regular ingestion of the Healing the Globe scalar enhanced products offers you the potential to basically detox every single cell in your body. Now, are you going to have detox reactions? Well, people who go in the chambers may notice a detox reaction, not usually that major. Using the products, less likely. One of the things to understand, too, is that actually you will probably receive more benefit by regular ingestion of enhanced products than going to the chambers on a once-a-week basis, even though the chamber is stronger. Because basically what you're doing is turning your body into its own scalar engine, generating frequencies. Okay? I mean, you're really doing that. But if you have any detox reaction, be very minor. If anyone had any more, then all you do is use less of the product for like 30 days and then gradually build it up. But I don't think anyone will have any problem. What it'll do is detox over a number of months, begin to increase that cellular potential, the transmembrane potential, and start moving the waste out. And every single cell will start to function as cleanly as it can again. Okay, I mentioned cancer. I'm going to choose my language very carefully here. I want you, when you quote this or repeat it, that you try and use equally careful language so as not to run afoul of the FDA and the AMA. One of the things that we know is that cancerous cells are almost always low voltage cells, running at between 15 and 20 millivolts. That in fact, if you ever found a cancerous cell running at a higher voltage, you basically would probably want to retest your results because it's probably wrong. It's virtually 100% of the time. Am I saying that basically low energy levels in cells is what causes cancer? No, I'm not that naive. Cancer, there are multiple factors. It's primarily a disease of the immune system anyway. There are multiple factors involved here. But what we are saying is that at this point in time, we know that there is a correlation. The lower the energy level goes, the more likely it is that a cell can become cancerous. What we have here is a slide that can explain that. It's a metaphor. It's actually, I didn't propose it. There are doctors who have proposed this as an explanation for this. And they basically base it on an experience we have in the world today. What you're looking at is a picture of Calcutta on the left and a resort on the right. Basically a poor society and a wealthy environment. Let me ask you a question. Which societies have the higher birth rates? Poor societies or wealthy societies? Poor. Have you ever thought about why that is true? I'll tell you why. It's a very simple reason. Survival in a poor society depends on the survival of your family, the survival of your children. If you live in sub-Saharan Africa now, because of desertification, because all the wood's been picked up, you have to send the kids out in the morning. They have to hike out 15 to 20 miles to find firewood to bring back to the fire that evening. If you don't have the children to do that, your family does not cook. The survival of the members of the family are fundamental. Yet in the poor societies, what's the survival rate of children? Not good. So how do you guarantee the survival of your family and the survival of your children? You have lots of them. In a more fundamental sense, it's basically you're ensuring the survival of your DNA, sort of a fundamental need to basically the survival of your code, of your family lineage. Basically, you need lots of children, otherwise extinction is likely. That's why you tend to have lots of children. In a wealthy society, when you hear of a child dying, it makes the front page of the news. We consider that such an abnormality. In a poor society, it's an everyday fact of life. Tragic, but more common. In wealthy societies, our concern is where are we going for vacation this year? We're basically more interested in the quality of lifestyle. So how does this work relative to cells? Well, think about it this way. If we know that cells tend to die at around 15 millivolts, you drop from 90 to 20 millivolts. As a cell, what are you thinking? I mean that figuratively, the cell isn't thinking. What are you thinking? Essentially, the cell is saying to itself, my goodness, death is imminent. 5 more millivolts lost and I'm a goner. How can I ensure the continuation of my genetic code? Rapid proliferation. That's why cells rapidly proliferate. If you raise the energy level of the cell stops proliferating. So now listen to me carefully. I'm not saying that use of scalar enhanced products cures or prevents cancer, but I'm saying that and we know that regular ingestion of the scalar enhanced product can raise the energy level of every single cell in the body. The implications in terms of preventing and reversing cancer are profound. I'm not saying it does anything, but the implications are profound. Next slide. Okay, here's another simple thing to think about, energy levels. If basically we know optimum is around 90 millivolts, 70 to 90, if your cells, because you're ill, because you haven't eaten well, and diet, and 100 other reasons, you're running all the cells of your body at 40 millivolts, 45 millivolts, if you can raise that energy level to 90 millivolts, all the trillions of cells in your body, you've just doubled the energy level of your entire body. You are going to experience increased energy levels. This is science as nature intended. And you can see it. I told you we can offer proof that we're increasing the cellular energy of every single cell in your body. Now, the next thing, before we bring it up, I'm going to explain it, the next slide. It's a different form of Kirlian, well, we brought it up, a different form of Kirlian photography. What we're doing is taking a thumbprint. And Terry told you, you could actually hold the product and it would make a difference in your body. You're familiar, chiropractors, with what they call applied kinesiology. Is it valid? Yes. But I will tell you that 99% of the people who do it don't know what they're doing. But the fact is you can actually measure that holding products creates change in energy states. What you're looking at is on the left is a thumbprint of a person, normal, and on the right is that same person holding a bottle of Immunity Plus that's been charged. You can absolutely categorically see that the energy state of that human has been changed just by holding the product, more so from regular ingestion of that product. Pretty wild, isn't it? Next slide. Okay. We already talked a little about this, like in the people who wear the scalar watches. Effectively, and again, I'm not arguing that power lines and so on cause brain tumors. They may or may not. But the one thing we do know is they're not normal to the human body. They are disruptive frequencies to the human body. If you can shield those frequencies off of the human body, it is beneficial. And the fact is, your body is now like several trillion scalar watches shielding itself. Regular ingestion of the Healing the Globe scalar enhanced products will shield your body from basically man-made frequencies that are disruptive to the human body. Next slide. Now, we already know we can improve blood patterns using the enzymes, using the eradicator. This does it too, and in slightly different ways. It'll improve the chylomicron. Patterns for chylomicrons are basically a combination of fat and protein circulating in the blood. You don't want them there. It'll eliminate them, reduce triglyceride levels, we know. It'll also improve clotting patterns on the blood, which is kind of significant as people are worrying about strokes as time goes on. Boost the immune system, something we can measure. The tests can be done, have been done. Literally, you take immune cells, lymphocytes from the body, from one body, split them into 3 pieces, 3 groups. One of them you leave untouched as a reference. One will charge with an 8 hertz electromagnetic wave, which we said we can charge, just not as much, and the other with an 8 hertz scalar wave. Okay? Then we see their proliferation rate here in a good sense, because we're looking for white cells to basically replicate, to build your immune system. So we're not talking cancer here. Based on the reference, we know that the transverse electromagnetic charge product will allow for basically what we say a 76% increase in proliferation rate. The scalar enhanced 149% increase in proliferation rates. That regardless, if you take Immunity Plus, independent of what Immunity Plus does as an herb, the scalar charge in it will enhance your immune system by 149%, independent of the product. All studied and measured. Next slide. One of the things we can do, again, we have the rotating wave here, is you can measure the electrical output of the brain. There is a notable regular ingestion of healing the globe scalar enhanced products will produce a notable increase in the amplitude of your brain waves. Okay? I wasn't actually looking for applause. I was just emphasizing you're getting smarter. Okay, it does something else to your brain too. Next slide. As most of you know, most people are dominant in one side of the brain or the other. We know that exposure to the scalar waves, regular ingestion of the healing the globe scalar enhanced products will balance out the two halves of the brain. So for those of you who are guys who are left dominant, you'll get more right activity. Women, you get more left activity. And as we said, it's getting bigger. So all of it measured on EEGs. This is not speculation. You can measure it all on EEGs. Next slide. Okay, here's another thing. We know that basically embedding the scalar waves, taking the products, regular ingestion of the healing globe scalar enhanced products, basically inhibit the uptake of noradrenaline by the P12 nerve cells, which basically reduces depression and reduce that uptake by about 20%. Maybe an easier way of saying it is people are going to feel 20% happier. Next slide. Remember I told you it embeds in DNA, and I told you we tell you why it's important? You can actually use a spectrograph to measure that basically regular ingestion of the healing globe scalar enhanced products will increase the covalent energy level of the hydrogen atoms in the human body, and that can be verified by a spectrograph. Well, that sounds very impressive, doesn't it? I heard someone laughing. What does that mean? Well, covalent just means it's the double bond in hydrogen. Covalence, the double bond. It just so happens that the main bond that holds your DNA together is the covalent hydrogen bond. So you can look at it this way. Taking healing the globe scalar enhanced products is like doing aerobic exercises and weight training for your DNA. It basically strengthens your DNA, makes it, I won't say impervious, but more resistant to changes and alterations by things like free radicals. What have we learned so far? Well, the two things. The scalar enhancement, the small stuff, improves the efficacy and the efficiency of every single product we have and its ability to get in the body. And the big stuff, the whole series of benefits that we've already talked about, specifically and primarily the raising of the cellular energy level. Questions? How long will the products hold their charge? I don't expect anyone to ask me that. Good. They actually can be, the charge can actually be higher 6 months after the product is charged than when you first charge it. Just keep it away from power lines and basically kitchen outlets and so on, things like that, where it gets exposed to 60 cycle currents that may push the charge out. But on a normal shelf, it will get stronger over time. Okay. Are charged products safe? Absolutely. And again, I wasn't sure if I wanted to mention nuclear submarines, because, reactors. Has nothing to do with that at all. Okay? We're talking about something here that's existed since the beginning of time. It's inherent everywhere. It's natural stuff. We're just choosing the application and the frequencies and the amplitudes that are beneficial to the human body. This is science as nature intended. That's all it is. There's nothing unhealthy here. What will I notice? Maybe the big question. What will you notice? Now, let me clarify something here. Even before we enhanced the products, people doing the baseline of health, because the baseline of health basically was raising every system in the body, we were getting a 90% success rate when people did the whole baseline of health. And I also want to clarify what I mean by the whole baseline of health. They're doing things like the flaxseed that we don't sell. They're doing exercise, deep prayer or meditation, doing the whole deal. We're basically getting a 90% success rate. I don't care what the disease was. Whether it was cancer, heart disease, diabetes, MS, and you know all the stories. When people did the whole thing, that over 90% of people told us they noticed a profound improvement in the state of their health, usually confirmed by their doctors, who said it probably had nothing to do with what you're doing, but keep doing it. We know that. You're not going to improve upon 90%. Why? Some people, it's just their time. Some people will die. That's going to happen. Some people, it's their time. Some people, surprisingly, like to be sick. It's a great form of attention. Some people like to be sick. How many people do you know bought the products, and when you keep asking them, oh, I haven't used it yet? We find the products work 30% better if you actually use them. Some people, actually, I mean, there are genetic problems sometimes you just can't overcome. You're not going to improve upon a 90% success rate. I guarantee you any medical doctor in the world would give his eye teeth to have a 90% success rate. That won't change. So why are we doing this? Because what you're going to notice are more profound results and faster results. You'll notice it more quickly, and it'll be stronger. And you'll notice some additional changes and improvements in those who are liable to improve. Okay. I don't get to do this very often, but since I own the stage at the moment, I'm going to do something, talk about marketing. I actually know a lot about this, although here, I'm the product guy. But Rick and Terry are going to come up in a little bit and really go into detail, but I'm going to give you my bent on this, my experience. Just a little bit. Step out of my product world, talk marketing. In terms of your business, one of the things is, and you've seen it, the products are demonstrably superior to any other product line out there in the world in seconds. In seconds. The long-term results are infinitely superior. Nobody can match this. They're unique in the market for now. Let me explain something here. If you have two products, basically both made from the same things, and one you can demonstrate is superior, and they cost the same amount of money, which product are you going to buy every time? The one you can demonstrate is superior. So what does that mean for every other company selling health and nutrition in the world today? They have a fundamental problem. Now, the one thing we know is that no company can ever control the market permanently. That means every other company in the world must do something similar to what we're doing, or they cannot survive. From this point in time, the gauntlet is thrown from this meeting. If you can't do what we do, you'll be out of business. Okay? My guess is you may have 6 months to a year before others are doing it. At that point, if you've done your jobs well, all any other company will be able to say is, well, our products are as good as healing the globes. Yeah. And they will have to say that. That's actually not idle talk. You remember back when people started competing with Xerox for copiers, Savin and Kyocera? They basically, all their ads said, and we're as good as Xerox. Yeah. Essentially, it becomes the reference point. That's all everyone will have to do. You have 6 to 12 months to establish that position. But the gauntlet has been thrown. I'm going to show you how strong that position is. I'm going to show you our products versus some competitors. So you can actually see. And we can do this with competitor after competitor. I don't care whether it's MLM, whether you buy it in a store, the health food store. Everybody, we can beat hands down visibly. I'm going to show you 2 examples. First one is one, and don't pull them up yet. I'm going to show you elagitanin versus basically what is probably the best-selling red raspberry product on the market. If you go to the net and you do a search on ellagic acid or red raspberry, this is the one that's going to come up overwhelmingly most of the time. There on the left, elagitanin on the right, charged. Take a look. Now, theirs is a pretty good product. Look at it. It's actually putting out a pretty good field, but you see it's only about half the size and half the intensity. If those products were the same price, which one would you buy? Which one would anyone buy? Right. Well, I'll tell you, their product actually costs 100% more. It retails for $79.95. Now let me ask you, who, in any state of mind, would pay double the money for half the product? You're talking game, set, match on selling that product. It's over. I'm going to show you another product, and hold for a second. It's ageless. Now, some of you know that there's another company out there, and they're a great company. They're not MLM, that sells carnosine. And they put out great magazines and newsletters. They do high-quality product. In fact, their product is so high quality, they use the same source for carnosine we do. We went out, we looked around the world, found people who manufactured carnosine here, in Asia, in Europe. We found only one that produced high-quality carnosine that assayed out every time. It was a manufacturer in Germany. This other company buys half the world's supply. We buy the other half the world's supply. Everybody has to buy somebody else's that doesn't assay out. They're a good company. They sell for less money. On the other hand, what I'm going to do is show you, now that we've modified the formula, added the DMAE, and charged the product, what the difference in the two products are. And the carnosine is identical. We buy from the same person. They're on the... Game, set, match. Let's see. It's exciting, isn't it? Next slide. Okay, in conclusion, every single Healing the Globe product is now the best of its kind. Every single Healing the Globe product now works to basically charge every single cell in your body with healing scalar waves. The effect is cumulative. The more products you take, the more often, the more it charges your body. So we're not looking for people now trying one or two products. You want them on the baseline of health. The baseline of health does its own thing, and now the more they take, the more their bodies are charged. What it means to your health is unquestionable. As I already said, someday everyone has to do something like it or they're no longer in business. The paradigm has changed. It's like sailing around the world. Everyone can now see the difference. Everyone can see the difference. The game is over. They have to do something like it or they're out of business. What it means to your financial future is beyond calculation. I cannot even imagine what it's going to be worth. When we did Odyssey and all we did was introduce new products, the company doubled in size in a single day. If you remember in June, they had their largest day, basically that was even later in June, they had the largest day in the company history on the 27th, and 2 days later they doubled it. That was just product. You are now able to show everyone that we have the best of its kind and nothing can match it. Game, set, match. Thank you.